Who is ready for a little monochromatic exploration with me? Hi, it's Teresa from the Pigeon Letters design team, and I'm so excited to share this tutorial with you because it allows us to explore a little bit and play a lot of it. And let's get started. So what we're going to do is get the supplies that we need. First is a pencil and some watercolor paper because we're going to draw some petals. Does it matter what these petals look like? No, because we're playing. We're also going to be using one single watercolor color. This will give us a really good chance to play with the tones and values and hues of our color. An eraser for erasing our pencil lines, and I have a size 6 brush and a size 2 brush and some water, and let's get started. Okay, so we're drawing a flower, like I said, any size that you want. I kind of made up the petals. I'm just making it up as I go along because, like I said, we're just playing. And then what I'm going to do is we are going to have some wet on wet action. We are using a wet brush and wetting the paper only in the area where we want the paint to fill. So I'm concentrated on this large petal. I am following my lines and then just coloring in with just water where I want it to go. Then what I'm going to do is I'm going to get my pigment and get a very concentrated amount of my pigment, and I'm going to put it right along the bottom border of where my petal is meeting with that pencil line. So you can see me load it up and then just drop the pigment right there. And because we already pre-wet the paper, what is going to happen is the pigment is going to bleed and fill in the rest of the petal that is wet. So we're going to pack as much pigment as we want to right here into that sort of crease where the petals meet. And then what I'm going to do is with a plain brush with just water only is I'm going to touch it with the pigment, and then I'm going to sort of push it up. So it's a generous push to move that pigment to the rest of the petal. And so what this does is it gives us a really nice watercolor wash. It lays a nice foundation as a base of color for us, and it gives us that nice watercolor bleed that we are all used to looking at when we look at watercolor. So you can see I'm being very generous with the water, making sure that the whole petal is filled. So all of that pigment gets transferred. Now I'm going to do the same thing for the rest of the petals on the paper, but I'm going to give those petals a little bit of time. I'm going to give the main petal a little bit of time to settle, so I'm going to work on the center here. And it's the same technique, just getting the center wet and then adding the pigment around the border and then gently pushing it towards the center to fill in the rest of the area. Now I'm going to repeat the process for the other two petals. I am going to pay very close attention, and what I love about these Peggy Dean watercolor brushes is the tip is so fine that it allows me to get super close to that petal that is already wet, but not quite touch it, because if we were to touch those two, then we run into the risk of those two petal colors bleeding together. It's not that big of a deal if it does, because this is just our first base layer, but we want to try and avoid that if we can. no big deal if we can't. So like I said, we're doing the same exact thing that we were before. Go ahead and add a little bit more water to your brush after you load up the pigment in those corners, so you can generously push out the rest of that color so that it fills the rest of our petal. So pretty. Okay, I'm actually going to speed this up. The third petal, we're just repeating steps, the same steps that we've already done. As well as for the inside part of that flower. Once everything is dry, you can go ahead and erase your pencil marks. This is where I would usually remind everyone that I usually like to use watercolor pencil instead of pencils here, because I can't always erase the pencil lines underneath. And yeah, but for demonstration purposes, I wanted you to be able to see, so I used a regular pencil. That is all. Now I have my number 2 brush, and I am using the fine point in a very concentrated amount of pigment on my paintbrush, and I am outlining the leaf shape. And I'm basically, instead of using a pen to outline my work like I would sometimes do, I'm just using the tip of this number 2 brush and following my petals. So yes, I am a tracer, I am an outliner. This is the name of the game at this point in the painting, and we're going to go ahead and continue that for the entirety of our piece. We're going to outline each section with our pigment. I'm also adding little tiny dots into the center of the flower here. And then to give the petals a little bit of movement, I am getting pigment on my brush and starting from the bottom of the petal, I am working my way up in sort of a curved line that's following the petal shape, because you don't want it to be a straight line because it will make the petal look unnatural. And just adding tiny little like petal veins. And this adds just a nice little bit of detail. And I'm going to do it to the whole first layer. And then for the second layer here, with these small petals, I'm just using tiny little brush strokes up and out. To just add some more variation. And then finish it off with a couple more dots in the center of our flower. Now look at our beautiful monochromatic painting that got us in and able to explore the tone and values of the paint that we're using and have a little bit of fun. So make sure you tag Teresa Haddo and the Pigeon Letters in all of your beautiful recreations. I know that Peggy and I love to see what we have been able to hopefully inspire you to make. All right, bye friend.